I do want to read you this article that I found on an online Jewish library talking about the remnant of Israel. The remnant of Israel is a term denoting the belief that the future of Israel would be assured by the faithful remnant surviving the calamities that would befall the people as a result of their departing from the way of God. So, y'all remember, God led them out of captivity, and what happened? They ended up in captivity again. Does that sound like anybody's weak this here? Get freed and then you walk right? No, okay. No hands, no hands. On the one hand, the prophets foretold the forthcoming exile and destruction of Israel, and on the other hand, they held forth the hope and promise of its survival and eternity. The doctrine of the surviving remnant resolved this contradiction, referred to by most of the prophets. Micah 2:12 states, "I will surely gather the remnant of Israel." Jeremiah also. Joel, for in Mount Zion and in Jerusalem there shall be those that escape, and among the remnant those whom the Lord shall call. Repeated again in Obadiah. In Isaiah, he goes a little bit more in depth into this idea. He actually gives his son the symbolic name, and for those Bible scholars out there, I'm probably going to butcher the pronunciation, but again, it's okay. Shear Yashub, a remnant shall return. And he states this again as a fact, chapter 10, verse 22. A remnant shall return, even the remnant of Jacob. Paul applies this teaching in Romans. We just read a little bit from Romans. To the Gentiles that have come into the kingdom. Today, in the daily prayers, Jewish daily prayers, they include, "Guardian of Israel, guard the remnant of Israel, and suffer not Israel to perish." So there is this remnant that they've prophesied about. Israel's going to be cut down. But from this remnant comes life. So this idea is reinforced by John the Baptist. He talks about this in Luke chapter 3. He's baptizing folks, right? So they come up and he greets them with "brood of vipers." That's a good greeting, right? Can we start using that Sunday mornings? Oh, okay. "Who warned you to flee from the wrath to come? Therefore bear fruits worthy of repentance, and do not begin to say to yourselves, 'We have Abraham as our father.' My heritage is going to save me. My dad's faith, my grandfather's faith. For I say to you that God is able to raise up children to Abraham from these stones. And even now the axe is laid to the root of the trees. Therefore every tree which does not bear good fruit is cut down and thrown into the fire." All right, so we've got several prophets talking about this in the Old Testament. We've got John the Baptist talking about the same idea, this stump in Luke. And we've got one more, demonstrated by Jesus. I just want to point out for everybody that Jesus didn't need the axe that John was talking about. So Jesus is walking down this road, and he's hungry. This is Matthew 21. "And seeing a fig tree by the road, he came to it and found nothing on it but leaves." I want to stop right there, okay? You guys ever stir up your imagination when you're reading the scriptures? I like to imagine what Jesus saw and what he was thinking when this happened. Now, the wording of this, he came to a tree and found nothing on it but leaves. Does this remind you of anything? This reminds me of the beginning in the book of Genesis, when God says, "Where are you, Adam?" Now, I know we teach that a lot, where God's off doing his own business and comes back and can't find Adam. "Adam! Adam, where are you?" Well, I don't see that how it went. I think God was walking in the garden and said, "Adam, where are you? Do you know where you are?" Now, what did he find when he walked up on Adam that day? A tree with nothing but leaves on it. There was no more fruit of relationship there. There was nothing but leaves. Okay, we'll come back. And he said to it, let no fruit grow on you ever again. Immediately the fig tree withered away. You know what it left? A stump. You guys ever have stumps in your yard? You cut down a tree, or previous owner cut down a tree. We bought our house a couple years ago, and we moved in, and the guy was some sort of forester. And so everywhere he went, that's not a joke, he really was. Everywhere he went, he came home with something. And some days, I think our yard looks kind of like a jungle. And Casey loves it. All the shrubbery and the flowers, and I look at it and I just see jungle. But he planted things in lines across the front yard, which frustrate me to no end because I have to cut the grass. And he may have enjoyed that kind of thing. It's really not my thing. I have to drive around every tree with that riding mower. And I have to do circles, and I have to come in from the other way. Some of them he even put so close to the driveway that if it grows up, that driveway is done. He's a forester. He should know this, right? One of them he actually cut down before they left, right by the driveway, and left enough of it to where I still have to drive around it on the mower. And so this year, I think it was earlier this spring, I decided I am done. I'm done. I'm not doing it anymore. So I went in the shed and got an axe. And I went out there and I was going to get rid of this stump. After about 5 minutes, I was done. The stump wasn't done. I was done. And you know what I had accomplished? Not a lot. I'd burned some calories, but the stump was still there. Very extensive root system. It wasn't going anywhere. I was able to chip off enough of the top to where I can drive over it now, so goal accomplished, but the stump is still there. It reminds me of a stump in Pastor Rick's backyard. And I remember growing up, my grandmother's not here. She would go around in our yard and plant fruit trees everywhere. Pear, apple, peach. This particular tree was a mulberry tree. Anybody ever had one of those in your yard? We had one in our yard. When we first started out, we got married. Caitlin was born, and she would go out in the front yard and play under this mulberry tree and come in with tattooed feet and then tattoo our carpet and our floors. They're a huge mess. So my dad got tired of it. Now, this was when I was younger. And so he cut it down. I'm sure there was some discussion with my grandmother, but he cut it down. And you know what? That thing came back. That thing came right back. And he would cut it down, and it would come back. And he would cut it down, and it would come back. Now, I looked this last weekend, we were up there, and I looked in the backyard, and it is just a stump now. I think it finally got the point. Probably through several fires and several cuttings, but it's finally gone. But a tree can be resurrected from a stump. And so I want to talk to you about from destruction to production. What does it take? Again, we're talking about conditions. We're going to talk about outside conditions that act upon us for better, for worse. Things are going to happen. So what does it take to go from that stump to something that's going to produce again? I just mentioned one of them, a strong root system. Some of these trees have an extensive root system. And it's nothing for them to have little, they're called stump sprouts, that just sprout up from the stump. They've already got that root system, so it's very possible for them to just pop up, just pick up where they left off. Like this mulberry tree that we wanted to leave. But they can come back to life from that stump because they've already got everything laid out for them. Strong root system. Foundation. Can anybody quote Proverbs 22:6 for me? Anybody remember what that is? Train up a child, and when he is old, he will not depart from it. Foundation. They're not just playing with kids back there. They're building a foundation. I was trying to get ready for this message this weekend, and took a couple of days off work. It was my birthday. I'm 34 again. And so I took a few days off work, and I worked on the message. And Saturday, I'm working on the PowerPoint presentation. And Caitlin, y'all see her running around on Sundays, right? Full of energy. Sometimes she just gets in these moods where she just wants to love on you. So I'm sitting there on the computer, and Caitlin walks up. Daddy, I love you. Daddy, I need a hug. And what are you going to do? You're going to drop everything. You have to build those foundations with your children. All right. I'm only on point 1 of 4, so I'm going to speed things up. Faith and grace and truth. Strong root system. Faith and grace and truth. We just read it in Romans chapter 11. Grace and truth in the person of Jesus. We are the elect of grace. We were brought into that remnant so that we could spring forth. Relationship with God. John chapter 15. Anybody remember what that is? The vine. You see these grapevines here? They do look kind of sad, but I promise that there's still some life left in them. John chapter 15. The vine. We have to stay connected to God. I was talking with a buddy about this the other day, and all these things that are going on that tend to stir us up, and we're probably going to wade a little bit into that a little bit later this morning, but it's interesting how we as a church in America have reached the point where we don't need God anymore. We pretty well got it together. I'm providing for myself and my family, and I just don't need it. And that's where you get into trouble. That's where we've gotten into trouble. We have to keep that connection to our Creator, our source, our root system. Relationship with people. And I'm going to read this from Ecclesiastes. I think. Yes. Ecclesiastes chapter 4, starting in verse 9. 2 are better than 1 because they have a good return for their labor. If either of them falls down, one can help the other up. But pity anyone who falls and has no one to help them. Also, if 2 lie down together, they will keep warm. But how can one keep warm alone? Though one may be overpowered, 2 can defend themselves. A cord of 3 strands is not quickly broken. Any Boy Scouts in here? Buddy system? Very important. Now, I know some of us think we don't need other people. We move out in the country and try to get a bunch of land of our own, and we're even growing our own food and maybe even some animals. Have these solar panels on the house so you don't have to rely on Alabama Power. We're pretty self-sufficient, right? It's interesting to me that the Son of God needed to surround himself with relationship, right? When he started his earthly ministry, he went around and surrounded himself with relationship. And again, this is one of these things I can picture when I read the scriptures, okay? He's picking disciples, right? That's what we call it.